Excuse me, sir. Is the Earth round or flat?
Flat.
Why do you say that?
Because of the firmament.
What's the firmament?
Do you even read the Bible, bro?
What up, what up? You are now listening to Once Upon a 785, the dopest podcast in the Midwest. I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's get into it, bitch. What up, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon a 785. Today's date is December 9th, 2024. As always, I'm your host, Georgie350, and this is episode 25, talking with Toni Nagy. Like, holy shit, I still can't believe it happened. She is such a down-to-earth, intellectual, smart, and absolutely fucking hilarious woman. And for those of you who don't know who she is, if you were to look on her link tree, which I'll have it linked in the show notes, it says she is a comedian that is dancing on the edge of reality and somatic wiggler. She honestly does so much. I can't stress how fucking cool she is. And yeah, I'll put all her links in the show notes, and you should definitely go check her out because it's worth it. And yeah, you got to see everything she's doing. Podcasts, she's doing so many things. But as always, before we get into this badass episode with Toni, let's do some quick announcements. I'm going to start first by plugging my TikTok at Georgie350. Come hang out with me when I go live or check out all my videos. Also, I'm on Cameo now at Georgie350 if you didn't know. So go check me out for any of your personalized videos that you would want. You know, birthdays, I'll roast people. I don't give a fuck. Whatever. Moving on, you already know I have 3 places you can go and get some dope clothing. First is habits365.com and use promo code Georgie350 to get 15% off your order. Next, you can go to reaperapparelco.com and use promo code Georgie350 to get 10% off your order. And last but not least, you can go to cocoburry.com for your premium sweatsuits, all different colors, and use promo code, you guessed it, Georgie350 to get 30% off your order. Also, go check out the Flat Earth Sun and Moon clock app in the App Store, but make sure you use my referral link or use code Georgie so they know who sent you. If you would like to watch the video version of the podcast instead of just listening, I have 2 options. First, for $5 a month, you can go to patreon.com/onceupon785. You'll get the episodes for everyone else. You won't have to listen to any of this intro because now for Patreon, it'll be completely different. You won't have this intro. It'll be all different. No of the ads that I read or like trying to promote, the clothing, and none of that's going to be on the Patreon. Or you can use Spotify and you can sign up for the premium subscription plan straight through Spotify for $4.99 and get the video version. Also, questions, comments, or if you want to come on the show, you can email me at onceuponA785@proton.me. That's M as in Mary, E as in everybody. Lastly, if you want to support me and you enjoy the show, do me a favor and leave a rating or a review, or just share the episode with someone who you think might find it interesting. I appreciate it greatly. because any way you can support helps me get closer to hopefully being able to do this full time someday. And now let's get into today's episode with Toni Nagy. What up and welcome. And we are back. And I have one of the most awesome guests, Toni Nagy. She's a comedian, blogger. She does the most awesome interpretive conspiracy dances, I'd say. Is that what they're called?
I mean, you can call them whatever you want.
I think she's the most awesome TikToker I've found all year, hands down. And I don't know. I seen your video and I was just like, oh my God, this is the coolest girl I've ever seen in my life. And I messaged you and you messaged me back and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And I like how you do the conspiracies with the interpretive dances because I just think it's so funny, but it's so true. I make my whole family watch it. And I seen you on live the other day and I seen you said that you got into conspiracies with a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, like Bart Sabrell.
Yeah, that documentary, did you see it?
Yeah.
I got that documentary as a VHS tape when I was like 21 years old. So it was like still on a tape. I mean, I think DVDs were floating around, but that tape was something that really opened my eyes for sure to making me be like, wait a minute, what is possible when it comes to how far the government would create a narrative in order to manipulate.
So then that's what pretty much got you to start looking into like the government's a whole scam pretty much.
I mean, it was a catalyst for sure. I also think I was coming of age during 9/11, and I think there was a huge population of people that were questioning the official narrative. So those things were happening kind of tangentially, and that was also the birth of the internet and access to free media and alternative media, however you want to quantify that. So I think those things happening all at the same time made it so I was in this trifecta of questioning everything that I thought I knew or that I had been told.
And I was like in sixth grade when 9/11 happened, so I had no clue what was going on then. But I watched a movie called Zeitgeist when I was like 18.
Oh, yeah, I love Zeitgeist.
And
Yeah.
that's what got me into conspiracies pretty hardcore. And I was just like, oh man, 9/11 didn't happen the way it did. And then I learned about the Federal Reserve banking system and how that's all a sham. And they met on an island and did a whole bunch of shady stuff. And that's why I love your videos, because you talk about the deep state and it's just the way you do it. It's so funny and it's so informative and it's true. And I wanted to ask you, do you ever have any problem with like TikTok or anywhere like shadow banning your videos?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I got the live that you saw, that one, they kicked me off the live and then put me in jail for a week. I'm not allowed to go back
No way.
live for a week. Yeah, it was like in the middle. I can't remember what I was saying, but it was just like, you're done. And then when I tried to appeal it, it was, I mean, I always get shadow banned for the same reason, which is quote unquote spreading misinformation, which is so subjective. Misinformation is a subjective term because it's implying that the information that is legitimate is only government approved or corporation approved. And, and again, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm speaking on a corporate platform and I'm trying to, do my best to discuss things that are threatening the very platform that I'm on. So it's not like, what? I can't believe this. This is part of the territory. And the question is how clever can you be? to continue to have these conversations while censorship is so rampant.
Yeah, because I was on live one night and we were talking about how dinosaurs may or may not be real, and they took my live away and they said it was for hate speech.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, that's so insane. Like, I can't say dinosaurs aren't real or you're going to say it's hate speech. So now I have to be,
Dinosaurs aren't real as hate speech is a funny t-shirt.
that is good. I should make that t-shirt. That's awesome. Um, so then besides like 9/11 and the moon landing, is there like any other like super, I don't know, deep conspiracies that you believe that other people might not believe?
Well, I mean, I think there's things that are constantly resurfacing and things that are happening right now in this current paradigm where you will get the quote unquote official story that the media has vetted, and then there will be people that are investigating what's really going on. I mean, the word conspiracy, I think, has this brand to it. And that brand is unfortunately now associated with like, I think alt-right ideology, which I think was intentional. This questioning of the state. I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but it used to be very left-wing. It used to be very liberal to question authority. It used to be very democratic to question authority. I mean, if you're looking at like the JFK assassination, or you were looking at the Vietnam War, these were progressive people that were unclear and unsure of what the government was up to, because what the government was up to was so conservative, and the values were, you know, pushing conservative values and quote unquote Republican agenda. And I think what was interesting or intentional was this kind of convergence where it's like everything switched. Like suddenly it became a right-wing thing to be questioning authority, because you had QAnon happening during a Democratic president. You know, so when everyone was like, oh, Obama is like, you know, whatever they were talking about with Obama and the Clintons, it's like, well, sure, but what about Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. and everyone before that? I mean, I think to me that the thing is that it's not a partisan issue. You know, corruption is not partisan, it's bipartisan. And so anytime you kind of get into this headspace where you're thinking that just one party is participating in this way of behaving, I think you're already missing the mark. The point is that this is happening, and either party is contributing because both parties have the interests of the state at hand, not even their own party.
Kind of like two wings of the same bird. Like it doesn't matter who's president, it's going to be the same.
I mean, it matters in terms of what agenda is being pushed, but where it doesn't matter is that the agenda is already decided.
So then, do you believe in like I don't know to say believe, but like how there's like the 13 bloodlines that control the world? Like
I mean, I think that sometimes like the way these things are presented are, you know, it's like the way they're presented is a little bit more like theatrical than it needs to be, because I don't even think that's a conspiracy that like, oh yeah, like power is passed down through families. Yeah. Like, what do you think a monarchy is? It's power being passed down by families. And I think the idea of a democracy was something that was supposed to address that directly, is like, well, if you only have power being passed down by certain families, then the culture of that family will be determining, you know, global politics till the end of time. So I think the idea of a democracy was originally around like, how do we diversify power and influence and how we self-organize. However, the same like monarchy type thinking or oligarchic thinking of I'm going to be looking out for my family or my specific friend group or those that are financially going to benefit me. That is just being echoed in our quote unquote democracy. So it's like there's something about the theatrics of a lot of the, like the bloodline stuff where I'm like, it's just actually, it's not, take out the theatrics and people will actually get into it more.
Yeah. And I seen your interview with Trump, which was hilarious. And
People got so mad at that one, but that one was so funny to me.
He got mad at it?
No, I mean people on the internet, like many dudes on the internet were like, unfollow. So mad. I was like, this is actually hilarious.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to fill in people, there was these like all these comedians were interviewing Trump, including, Joe Rogan, who I used to like really be a big fan of, to be honest. Like I thought Joe Rogan was doing interesting stuff and questioning a lot of narratives and had a lot of cool scientists on his podcast. But I was just disappointed that like, oh, this isn't an interview. This is an endorsement.
Yeah.
And I was like, lame. Like how could you didn't ask one hard question. How could you not be curious about like Trump's relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, who he's been photographed with like truly like hundreds of times? Like I was just so disappointed that these comedians weren't actually asking questions and they were just low-key doing endorsement commercials. I was like, gross. We're supposed to be the philosophers. We're supposed to be the ones that are not taken by the joke, like by the charade that like, oh, these politicians are looking out for us. So I interviewed a pumpkin and I put a Trump wing on and I asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. And I thought they were actually really hard-hitting questions.
They were. And if someone would have actually asked that, it would have been awesome to hear what he had to say, because Trump is pretty good about answering on his feet, but he's also good at like just going around in circles and not really answering the question.
I mean, I wouldn't even say that's a skill. I would say that's actually something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? What's happening? That does not feel like that I don't feel safe. If I was having a normal conversation with someone and I kept asking them questions and they kept saying something completely different, I would be like, oh, we don't share reality.
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I am worried for your well-being.
And there's a lot of conspiracy podcasts that I listen to that they all talk about how right or left, it doesn't matter. But then when it got closer to election, they all gravitated towards one side or the other side. And they think that Elon's like going to be doing good things. But in my opinion, I don't think Elon's got our best interest at heart or anything like that. I think once you hit the billions of dollars, you don't care about the people.
I mean, the idea that Elon Musk is like concerned about the citizens is comical to me. That is funny. Like I am confused when people think that, but I also understand. I definitely believe there is this daddy complex that's going on, and Tucker Carlson really tapped into it at that. I think it was the Georgia Republican Convention when he was talking about daddy's home and he's going to spank his 15-year-old daughter, which was really indicative of a collective fear around feminine influence, because he's not going to spank his son. He's going to spank the 15-year-old daughter, which is very pedo, to be honest. Like,
it is.
I think it was pedo and it was incestual and it was definitely sexualized. And you had all these, people cheering wildly about this idea of daddy being home, spanking his 15-year-old daughter. I mean, the comedy writes itself there. It is definitely indicative of a deep daddy wound in society and in culture that I think that the Republicans and the quote unquote conservative values are tapping into. And that's why I keep having to quote things, because I don't actually believe that they're concerned with family values, but that is something that keeps being brought up over and over and over again, because I do believe there is a collective wound around family and around parenting and around mommy and around daddy. And the more you can tap into these primal psychological conditions, the more you'll be able to manipulate people.
Yeah. And I feel like they want it to where the parents got to work 40 hours a week, kids got to go to a public school and learn what they want, and you never have time to think for yourself.
Yeah, the thinking populace is very dangerous. But as a woman, I'm not going to say that I think the 1950s were easy on women. Having no other opportunity but to be a homemaker and a mother, and having that pressure on you to be a caretaker for your whole life, and that dependency on the man in your life is incredibly scary. Like, if you live in a capitalist society and you're not making capital and you're dependent on someone to financially support you, that puts you in a position where being your authentic self is basically impossible. And so, we all know what it's like to go to work and have a boss and kind of have to keep your mouth shut or do what your boss wants, or, just because they're your financial stability. Well, what happens when that's in a marriage and that's not necessarily consensual? That's just a cultural norm. And how many women were in circumstances where they had to hide their authentic selves, hide their actual desires, hide their actual needs, hide their emotional state, because they were just trying to continue to survive in a capitalist system where they weren't making money. Like, that to me feels dangerous AF. And I'm glad that that's not the current paradigm. However, I do, see the complexity of when both parents are financially strapped. Where is the energy and where are the time for children? Like, that is the psyop.
Yeah. And I feel like I have 3 kids, but I love my kids so much I gave them each their own mom so they didn't have to fight over mom time.
LOL.
And but I feel like when, like, some women, like, the government likes it when they're not with their partner and they're married to the state with, like, benefits and food stamps. Like, that benefits the state and probably the federal government in the end. And I feel like a lot of it's almost like that's what they're trying to move towards. Like, I read in Texas, they would actually prefer, no matter makes the most money, that whoever makes the most money, they're the one that doesn't get the kids and they got to pay the child support, because Texas actually makes money off of that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I think every government program is, looking to exploit situations and exploit human nature, which is like the sad part, because so many of us are looking for support, looking for community support, and have genuine needs and concerns. And when you hope that your country would be providing that for you, but actually they're trying to figure out a backhanded way to exploit you at every corner and at every turn, that is incredibly taxing. And then you always have to kind of unpack these false narratives and be like, wait, what's really happening? What is the real priority? In what way am I being exploited yet again? And that takes its own mental toll, I think.
And I was going to ask you, you had that, I think it was the interview with Trump where you talked about tariffs and how you think we should not do tariffs and just keep it how it is now.
I'm just saying that's not a solution. What happening is now is not a solution either. What's happening now is a complete exploitation. And again, our foreign policy is based on slave labor of other countries.
Yeah.
And there's more slaves now today than ever before. I think the documented amount is at least 50 million, and that's documented. That's like what they're saying publicly. So what's happening right now is not working. That is true, but the tariff idea isn't a solution. That's just actually emboldening more corporate corruption in the end, and the consumer is going to be the one that's going to be offsetting those externalities. So I think what a lot of people don't understand is the externalities of business, which is basically how corporations offset internal costs onto the consumer rather than absorbing them themselves. And so the tariffs are just going to be another example of that. It's not like that's going to solve our economic crisis or our foreign policy crisis, which to me is the bigger crisis, to be honest.
Yeah. Have you gave any thought to the whole Project Bluebeam or whatever? They say that the aliens are coming, or didn't the government disclose that aliens are real?
I think the reason why every time someone says that and people are like, what? And there isn't this like big reaction is I genuinely feel that we already know everything. And aliens are what? Interdimensional beings? Yeah, of course they're interdimensional beings around. Like, I don't think that that's that odd to think of. If we were to look at quantum physics, or we were to look at science and understand how limited our senses are and how limited our perception are, the idea that there are intelligent consciousness that we are not perceiving feels like actually pretty logical to me. Whether they're from like planet Zoltar and have like a federation and some alien government. I mean, I don't care. I don't think so. Why do we want another alien government? Why more government? I think we're just like anthropomorphizing aliens, or we're anthropomorphizing these conscious beings. And I think the idea of alien is like, we want to think there's like another planet and then the creatures from the other planet have come here. I don't know, maybe, but I think there's plenty of creatures on this planet or in this dimension that we're just not perceiving, which to me feels more logical than like all this like space travel. But then again, I mean, I don't really know that much. I don't think our knowledge of space is that vast. I actually think it's really minimal. So I think the reason why it's hard for everyone to get like all excited about quote unquote aliens is because we're probably all intuitively and psychically aware that we're living with interdimensional beings always, and we have been this whole time. So it's like, yeah, okay.
I'm actually of the belief that I think space is kind of like dinosaurs. It's just fake and gay. I think space is like a superfluid, but I don't think the moon's something that we can actually land on like a rock. I think it's more like a plasma. But I don't know. I mean, they say every photo from NASA's CGI or an artist rendition, and that alone is pretty sketchy. I was arguing with my mom the other day about how she's seen the moon landing on the TV, and I was like, they said that nobody will believe it until they see it on the TV.
Yeah, I mean, seeing is believing, and there's so many ways to have us see things and then believe it. But then at the same time, we're seeing a genocide, and then we're like, what? I don't believe it. So I don't know. I mean, we believe what we want to believe. It's interesting to me how much violence we see, and then the mental gymnastics we can do to convince ourselves that it's not that bad or not a big deal or doesn't affect me or isn't my problem. So it's interesting that we'll be like, oh, I saw the moon landing. It must be real. But like, oh, I saw children be blown up. But like, not my problem.
Yeah.
It's just like selective concern and selective belief. But I think this is something that is, known for a very long time, that we are easily manipulated through media. That's, something that's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah. And I was going through my dresser the other day and I was like, holy shit, I have so much plastic made boxers that I'm definitely going to have plastic in my balls and I got to get rid of all of these. So I started getting rid of all the boxers that could give me, because that was the first video of yours that I seen. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And it's all true.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. All that polyester and the toxic fibers. It's like, yeah,
Pe-
that stuff's real.
People don't think it's true,
It's
but they
funny how
said,
much we have to investigate to figure out the different ways, the different new and exciting ways of which are being poisoned.
oh yeah. Because they said it's even getting in your bones and stuff now. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. And I think the thing that gets, like, upsetting is you can become really nihilistic and hopeless, you know? I think the first step towards investigating this type of information is this deep sense of betrayal and hopelessness, and you have to kind of then come out the other end to figure out what to do with this information, so it's not just something that over that's what I see a lot. I see people get very overwhelmed, and then it impacts their life quality, and then they're kind of, like, trying to convince everyone, like, "You gotta understand, we never landed on no moon," you know, and yeah, I mean, it's like, you're not gonna convince anyone of anything. You can just live your truth and, like, live your perspective and, talk about what you find interesting. I think to me, it's less about pretending I have an answer, but more I'm just open to questioning. I think that's where I'm at. I just that's what I find more interesting are the questions versus pretending that there are specific answers, you know?
Yeah, I think that's perfect because I just forgot everything I ever learned, and I'll listen to anybody's idea that they have, and then I'll just discern later and do my own research. And I don't have any facts. I just have what I believe I think is that, but I still don't even know. I think it's better to
No,
have
I
the
mean, the
truth.
idea of knowing is part of the human hubris.
Yeah. I do have a question. With you finding about the moon landing first, um, did any of the flat Earth stuff ever cross your path?
Of course, flat Earth has crossed my path. I'm a grown up, you know? Again, like, I'm not saying I understand or know the shape of the Earth. I'm saying, oh, interesting theory. You know, maybe I'm open. I am open. I'm fundamentally open. I think there is something interesting about this idea of like, there is more resources on the other side of the ice wall and that like we're some experiment that's being watched with like contained resources and how it's possible or even the psyop of like thinking you're completely insignificant, which I do think leads to kind of a certain sense of nihilism. And if you're nihilistic, you can be hopeless. And if you're hopeless, it's not very motivating to be hopeless. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting theory. I guess what is more interesting to me is like why? Like, why does the shape of the earth matter? And like, why would we be lied to about this? And I'm always wondering the whys versus the whats or the hows. Like the whys are like, and I do think the conversation around the whys is interesting.
I've actually been on a pretty deep rabbit hole of the whole flat Earth, and I think the whole reason why they would make it into the heliocentric model is because they wanted to get rid of God and have it be more science belief, like because evolution's a theory, gravity's a theory, and if the sun is what we're rotating around when it's actually the Earth and everything rotates around us because we're the center of the universe, it makes us more significant the other way versus it being a ball spinning through space, flying. And there's a bunch of things that people talk about that could prove that the Earth isn't flat, but I just think no matter what, it's definitely not what we're being told. And I do believe the ice wall and the other land, that's where I think aliens could be, like extraterrestrials, extra terrain. But then again, I'll never know.
Yeah, no, I think the thing that's interesting about spirituality, because even the word God, unfortunately, is really masculinized, right? And gendered. And religion is very masculinized and religion is very gendered. I mean, there was a time where, the goddess was revered and the goddess was worshipped. And now, there are religions that are polytheistic with many gods, but the like overarching Abrahamic religions that have taken over, really do focus on the masculine as the ultimate ruler and creator. And to me, spirituality and like patriarchy and gender have been so deeply like congealed. And I think it's like, I definitely believe that the revolution is spiritual, but I think it's beyond the paradigms that we've been exposed to, where it's like pitting genders against each other, devaluing one gender over another, and uh, having like shame in a punitive kind of system. I don't vibe with that. Like, I don't think like the all loving, unconditional love of the multiverse is going to be like judging your sexuality.
Yeah. I think the whole, like you said, like the Abrahamic religions are pretty much just modern religion is, I don't think that's not the right way. I think that's more of like a form of control. Because like King James, he wrote the King James Bible, but he also wrote 3 books on demonology. And he was gay. But
Yeah.
it's so weird. It's just, I don't know. And I think there's a lot of
Yeah, I
corruption in
think
the
that
church.
religion as a organized religion has been used as a tool of social control. And that is, part of the spiritual warfare. And having like an intermediary, always having like usually a male figure be the middle management that, you have to deal with in order to get to God.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think like middle management doesn't make sense to me when I think about a spiritual practice. I think you're kind of just like going direct to source.
Yeah. And I think that have you heard any, I guess, yeah, you've probably been way more into everything than I have. Have you heard of the whole Tartaria theory?
Oh, yeah, of course. My problem with all of it is it's too like, this is what happened. Atlantis was here, and then there was this flood. I'm like, maybe, I don't fucking know,
Yeah.
And that's where I always just like have this kind of bristling, because if we can see that our history is fake as fuck, right? And our history is written in order to serve an agenda. But like to talk about like Tartarian Atlantis and the Palladian system as if, no, this is real. It's like, we actually don't know. And that's fine. I don't mind the alternative questioning, but like I want there was this guy, his name was Michael Tsarion, Tsarion. I don't know if you ever came across him. And he had truly like a 3.5-hour lecture on like, I don't know, kind of this stuff, like the other species. And like, it was like a mythological journey into all the wars and the power struggles of these other species and these interdimensional beings and these lizards. And part of me was like, yes. And then the other part of me was like, what the fuck did I just spend 3.5 hours watching?
Yeah.
Because it was truly, he was just like in front of a board talking about lizard people. But I watched all 3.5 hours riveted.
There was that other guy that talked about the lizard people. Because Sam Tripoli
David
always
Icke?
talks about the lizard. What do you say?
Yeah. It was, yeah. Another comedian that like too right wing.
Because I listened, yeah.
We used to do some shows together. Fun, it's just too, I don't believe in the wings. I don't believe in the wings. Like, I'm so confused as to whenever a comedian supports a politician, I'm like, oh, why? I think no comedian should support politicians. That would be my plead to the comedian population. Don't support any of them.
Yeah, because
Make
George
fun of
Carlin,
all of them.
he didn't support any politicians. I think he had the
Who?
most accurate. George Carlin?
George Carlin? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, of course. That's what I always say. If what you're saying would make George Carlin roll over in his grave, then shut the F up.
yeah.
I have to do like, what would Jesus do? What would George Carlin think about my work?
Hell yeah.
And if he would think it's lame, I'm like, no, thank you. Back to the drawing board.
I think your stuff is so funny. It's so awesome. Because I told my sister, I sent her a video and I was like, I think I want to start explaining conspiracies like this. And it was to one of your dances, but I don't know if I could do it. I might try it and then we'll see. But I think you just have it mastered.
Oh, well, yeah. I've been doing it for a while. I mean, I also I just think like moving one's body in a funny way does kind of, I don't know. It's a little more entertaining than just like watching someone talk.
Yeah. Because I watched that one about plastic in your balls probably 3 times in a row on my lunch break. And I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome.
That's a big honor. Yeah, that's what you want because then your opponent's like, wait, what? What
Yeah.
just happened? And then maybe they watch it again. But I do think it's a good way to get information in people's heads.
Yeah. Because my parents they don't believe anything with the deep state. And I'm like, you really think that Trump's like coming to save us? Because he's not.
No,
And
but people so deeply want to be saved. And I think that's relatable content, I think we all want that. And there is because when you admit that that's not happening, then you have to take the next step, which means that, oh, you have to save yourself. And that feels like a lot of work and that feels like a lot of effort. And it's just, no, I would rather someone else do it for me. Thank you. Thank you. And I think most of humans spend their lives avoiding themselves and avoiding getting to know themselves and really doing the emotional excavation and work. So if you don't even want to get to know yourself, why are you going to really try to get to know the world? Or why are you really going to try to get to know the political system? Like these things are so deeply entwined because really knowing yourself is painful because the self is complex and there's a lot of like unresolved trauma you have to dig through. And then you also have to dig through the things that you've done because of your unresolved trauma. And then there's all this self-forgiveness you're going to have to kind of figure out and excavate. And all of that is a microcosm of the macro conversation we have to have about society, like how complacent we are, how complicit we are, how everything we do is actually contributing to a genocide. And even though we would judge genocide in the past, we are actively supporting it in the present. And what does that say about you? And what does that say about me? And what does that say about society? And oh, but I want this on Amazon, but like, Amazon supports genocide, but then like it comes tomorrow and my kid's birthday, it's like all of these things that we're doing constantly to not feel bad about ourselves. And I think we have to just let ourselves feel bad and simultaneously forgive ourselves because that is going to create the action to actually do something. But the denial is where we are truly controlled. And that is kind of, I think, the problem.
yeah. And then see, that's another thing. You're not only funny, but you're like intellectually in tune and you're smart and you're pretty awesome. I would say you're more of a comedian philosopher.
I appreciate that deeply. Yeah, I was a philosophy major in college, so
No
philosophy is
shit.
solely like my first love.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. I'm trying to think. Did you talked about QAnon earlier? Did you like buy into any of the QAnon at all?
Well, again, QAnon is co-opted left-wing conversations. Like, this is why I'm like, what the fuck? I was talking about the pedo politicians in 2002, but those pedos were Bush Jr. and Bush Sr.
Oh yeah.
Definitely Bush Sr., and definitely Dick Cheney. Like there was a documentary that a couple of my friends were making called it was called The Most Dangerous Game. I was friends with these guys that started this this website called GNN, and it was like Guerrilla News Network. So before, like a commentary on CNN, but this was before YouTube. This was before any of these like streaming platforms, and they wanted to make media that challenged the status quo, and it was like deliberately for the quote unquote MTV generation, so Gen X, elder millennials that grew up on a certain type of MTV kind of editing style, and they were making videos about the priests being pedos, about GMOs, all of these things that were not being talked about on mainstream media. And they were trying to produce this documentary called The Most Dangerous Game about this woman. Her name was Kathy O'Brien. And she wrote a book. What was Kathy's book called? It was like about mind control. I'll try to remember it and text it to you or message it to you. But it was about mind control and basically saying how she was like a victim of mind control from the US government and was like made a sex slave. And so it was all about her experience being a mind controlled sex slave for politicians. And she goes into great detail about the level of like torture she'd experienced, abuse, assault. It's very upsetting. You can find the trailer for this documentary on YouTube. I can send it to you. So they were trying to get this documentary going and trying to get funding. And of course, all the funding got pulled from a pretty major network the more that they found out. But one of the things that I had seen in the footage that never got aired was Kathy talking about Dick Cheney and how he had like, again, this is for entertainment purposes, okay? So this isn't slander. But she had used the word skull fucked, that Dick Cheney had like skull fucked her to such a degree that it like broke her jaw in multiple places. And she said he had like a huge dick. Dick Cheney. And I was like, whoa, like this is fucking horrible. So fast forward, there was this like picture of Dick Cheney on the internet that my friend showed me, and he was like sitting with his like khaki pants and like he was like manspreading, and like you could see the outline of his dick, and Dick Cheney, true to form, did have a huge dick. And then I was like, wait, what the fuck? So I don't know. I really did believe this woman's story. But again, it was easier for me to believe because she was talking about conservative politicians at the time, and I was a liberal person, right? But yeah, do I believe that like Bill Clinton was also on the Jeffrey Epstein rape plane? 100%. I knew girls that were afraid. It's like in New York at that time, they were like getting models, and they were getting these like young girls, and again, entertainment purposes, but that guy that was doing the girls that pulled up their shirts. What was that?
Yeah.
Girls Gone Wild. So he was also feeding girls to Jeffrey Epstein and to this like kind of like sex slave ring of politicians. And like all these New York girls called it the rape plane. They were like, oh yeah, there's this rape plane, and they didn't want to like have to go on the rape plane. Like this was rumors that I was hearing as like a 22-year-old, in New York. So yeah, like all of these, a lot of the stuff that like QAnon was talking about, like we were talking about years before. Like what I don't like about QAnon is like presenting as if the right wing is the answer, and then all the woman hating I'm like, you're gonna just be hating women? Like so boring.
Yeah.
Like nothing's more boring than just like hating the other gender. It's like get a life, So it just was like a really like sexist thing. But I was like, wait, you're telling it's upsetting to have all these like conversations co-opted by woman hating conservatives.
And I feel like there's a lot of them nowadays.
Huh?
There's a lot of those nowadays. Like they're getting more and more.
That's such a bummer.
It is.
I don't know. So boring. There's to me there's nothing more boring than like that conversation.
Did you know you wouldn't have happened to know like Trevor Moore at all? Did you know him before he was gone? He was
No.
because I seen his videos on like The Whitest Kids You Know, where he was talking about 9/11 to like kids and stuff, and
Oh, cool.
George Bush and his dad being in Skull and Bones, and George Sr. had to watch his son masturbate in the coffin so he could get into Skull and Bones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like stuff like that. I'm like, sure, I believe it.
Oh yeah, especially when it's politicians doing weird shit. I could totally see him doing
Well, I
all.
mean, look at what's happening with the whole Puff Daddy thing. Like this is, I mean, I've obviously made a video about this too, but we are all saw and like it was said, they were filming these parties, So if you're going to think that like hip hop was the only place that this culture was infiltrating, you are vastly mistaken. It's filming politicians doing depraved sexual acts is a perfect form of social control. Like that is happening. If we're going to admit that it's happening at white parties with Puff Daddy and, Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg, then we better fucking admit it's happening with the politicians. Like,
Oh yeah.
that does not seem like a giant leap to ask people to take.
And do you think they're ever going to release the Epstein flight log or like the Diddy party list?
I mean, I honestly think that this is my personal opinion for entertainment purposes, is that I think that the reason why they had the Diddy thing happen when it did, which again, they knew about this for years. This isn't like the FBI was suddenly like, wait, what? There are rapes in Hollywood? Who knew? Like they did. I think that they released at that time to send a message to any politician that would go against the agenda of the genocide and what's happening. And so they kind of were just like, at any moment, we can fuck you. Here's an example. And I think that, the FBI and the CIA don't care about hip hop. They don't care about hip hop culture. They don't care about like the impact of like how outing, hip hop stars and a few like white celebrities is going to impact society. That's not their concern. Their concern was like, we can fuck you if we want. And I do believe it was around silencing people with this current agenda around the genocide. Yeah, that's what I think.
And do you think that they're going to go through with the whole TikTok ban?
I'm trying to wake up in a timeline where they don't, because like I have a lot of followers on TikTok and I want to continue making TikTok videos. And I like TikTok. So I don't know. I mean, I know that like some people think like Trump likes TikTok, so Trump will keep TikTok. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really think the powers that be are like that concerned with what we say and what we are not saying. I think they're pretty arrogant and think we can say what we want and we'll still be like complacent. So I don't know. I'm hoping not. I'm trying to wake up there is a timeline where TikTok remains. So let's wake up in that one.
Yeah, because I finally got to like 7,000 followers and I have no other social media that's even close to that. And if they took TikTok away, I'd just quit social media. I think I wouldn't even try to go to Lemonade or any of that other weird stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be really hard for something new to pop off. Yeah.
And I think TikTok's got a lot of good, maybe it's just my algorithm, but it's awesome. Every day I just see nothing but awesome videos and informative and all sorts of shit.
Yeah, no, I think TikTok is a cool app. I mean, it's got a lot of ads and things you gotta sift through, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know. I hope not.
So do you believe in Mandela effects since you said that you want to wake up in a different timeline?
Well, I don't even think that's questionable that there are multiple timelines. I mean, I think at this point, again, if you're looking at like quantum physics and like parallel dimensions and multiple realities, I mean, this is definitely implied. And I think, a lot of, hard science is down with that. I think the Mandela effect is a little different because it's like basically splitting timelines. It's like not saying like, oh, we were maintaining on this timeline and had no contact with other timelines. Like the Mandela effect is insinuating that timelines are converging or splitting or there's like interaction versus like everything. A parallel dimension means that you don't ever hit, there's no cross section. So from what I understand, the cross section would be happening from like CERN messing with our dimensional reality, which is a little bit like above my pay grade of understanding. Is it possible that CERN is that powerful that it can do that? Well, it is. I mean, some of them are weird. Like it's like little things like the Monopoly monocle or
Yeah, the fruit of the loom,
Berenstein Bears or
corticonia.
whatever. But a lot of them, like, or like the Disney stuff, like all these like cultural iconic kind of questions that are always somehow around like some sort of corporate branding.
I can
But
see.
is CERN that powerful? Man, I hope not.
I know you used to be able to ask Google where Satan lived, and it said in Geneva, Switzerland, and it was literally where CERN was at. They said that was where Satan was.
Oh, that's fucking funny. I didn't know that.
And I know CERN has a statue of Shiva the Destroyer, and they do these weird ass ritual dances like during like the different solstices, and it is super weird. And I'm pretty sure their signs even got like a 666 kind of put into it.
Oh. I didn't know about their solstice CERN dances.
It was something like that.
Huh?
It was something like that because they were all like wearing masks and shit. It was super weird looking, and they just had that statue of Shiva the Destroyer.
Oh God. Well, you have to send that to me. I'm gonna try to wake up in a timeline where CERN does not have that much power.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's quite the move on their part.
and I mean Switzerland
Yeah.
is pretty
I don't know. I guess
sketchy.
it's possible, but I don't know how. I don't know if I think that humans are that powerful.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's fun trying to figure out what it is and what it isn't and what could be.
Yeah. Exactly. Having a questioning mind.
Oh yeah. And I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure everyone gets annoyed with me trying to. My sister said she'd rather just not think about it because then she doesn't have to worry about all this other shit. She's like, it seems like it'd be depressing. And I was like, no, it's not really depressing.
Yeah, I think you're right that a lot of people just don't want to think about it because it just means again, like it's opening up a can of worms around having to really question so much about your life and about your reality. And most people are uncomfortable with that. And then there are those that um are open to that. I mean, you're gonna be thinking about shit anyway. Why not question the fabric of the universe and reality? I don't know. Maybe it's a stoner thing.
I think, yeah, that's totally what helps me a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, but a lot of people are just like, no, thank you. I don't want to think. I don't want to think about any of that. You're like, okay,
I think, yeah, I just
continue.
watching Zeitgeist when I was younger and I was just super blitzed. It just changed my whole reality. And I think that's what just made it easier to, I don't know, think outside the box.
Yeah, I think that was actually a really great film, and it was really well explained. And I feel like I used to talk to that guy. I'm trying to remember on what platform.
I'm pretty sure they made a bunch of
Maybe it
other
was.
Zeitgeist movies too.
Yeah, there was 3.
Okay. Yeah, I've only seen the one about
Um,
9/11.
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm like, you just reminded me. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy was actually really cool. What were we messaging on? He was a cool guy. I can't remember what he was like working on after that. I don't know. Now I'm gonna have to investigate. I have to go through all my apps and be like, where'd that guy go? What's he up to?
Hell yeah.
I do have to go though, unfortunately, to go pick up my child now.
Hey, that's okay. Is there anything you wanted to plug? 'Cause I know.
Oh, yeah. If you go to my website, I will always have my shows on my website because I am a comedian and I'm always on tour. And I do like comedy shows. And then I also do somatic healing workshops where we move our bodies and heal our bodies together in a collective space.
Nice.
So TONINAGY.com.
Awesome. Do you ever do any shows in like Kansas City?
Someone was just telling me to go to Kansas City. If you have any recommendations of venues, let me know.
I think the Midland is one.
Midland? Okay, cool. I'll write it down. Midland.
Yep.
All right, word. I'm writing it down right now.
Because I will totally go
Midland.
watch you.
In Kansas City. Wait, Kansas City, Missouri or Kansas City, Kansas?
I think it's on the Missouri side.
Okay. That's like the most confusing thing about America.
Yeah.
What Kansas City you talking about?
Kansas City, Kansas isn't as cool as Kansas City, Missouri.
Which is funny in its own way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I
Oh, yeah.
appreciate it.
This was awesome. And I hope you have a good day.
Okay, word. Thank you.
See ya. Hell yeah. That was awesome. I just want to say thank you again to Toni for coming on the show. She is so awesome. I loved this episode. And if you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, and you don't mind, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on. That helps me out a lot. But just know you don't have to do either of those things. I just want you to enjoy the show. Again, check out our affiliates and use promo code Georgie350 for some dope-ass clothing. Don't forget, $5 a month, you can watch the video before anyone else on patreon.com and Spotify. I guess Spotify, you just get the video version. You don't get to watch it before anyone else. So, my email is onceupon785@proton.me. You can now find me on Cameo. Also, catch me live on TikTok every week. And as always, I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's hit him with the outro. Bitch. Have a good night.
Yeah. Middle of the map, can't swear I'm at. You can say I'm whack, it's just not a fact. Can't tell if I'm awake or I'm in a dream. I just know I'm geeked on amphetamines. Never was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend, now I am an addict. Or was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend.